Good evening, everybody. Hope you're having a good time. My name, for those of you I've not met before, it's a few in the room I've unfamiliar faces, many familiar faces. My name's James Allen. Come along a lot to these Grand Prix Tours events as an MC, work for the BBC in the UK, and many years ago, those of you with long memories will remember I used to broadcast in the States on ESPN, which is how this whole thing started. So we've got a fantastic lineup of guests for you this evening who've given their time to come and talk to you. And before I bring the first one up on the stage, I should just remind you, as Tess is perfect timing, putting this extremely exciting item here, which is the wishbone of a Red Bull, signed by Adrian Newey and Daniel Ricciardo. And it's a kind of money can't buy thing, really. It's been framed up by Red Bull Racing for us, for this evening. And what we're doing, if you didn't know, is we're raising money for basically the Formula One industry's benevolent fund, which is the Grand Prix Trust. Now, some of you have been very generous in the past. It was called the Grand Prix Mechanics Trust when it was first founded over 25 years ago. It's been rebranded. It's the Grand Prix Trust, and it's a benevolent fund for anybody who falls on hard times, who's worked in the Formula One industry. You might think they're all super well paid, mechanics and technicians, but obviously later in life, they aren't. First of all, they aren't all super well paid, and secondly, later in life, they sometimes fall on hard times. So there's a bunch of us who try and put something back to raise money for those people, and we get many claims a year, people who have all sorts of injuries and dementia and need hip replacements and stuff like that. So hopefully later on this evening, you'll be generous, and we've got a few quite exciting auction prizes for you later on. But first of all, let me introduce you to the man who actually founded this trust over 25 years ago. You probably know him better, though, as a three-time Formula One world champion, a man who certainly on this side of the Atlantic is racing royalty, and I think you could probably say that anywhere in the world, the one and only Sir Jackie Stewart.
James, thank you very much, and thank all of you for such a warm welcome. Grand Prix Tours are not a new organisation. They've been coming to Formula One Grand Prix motor racing for a very long time. And in fact, here in Toronto, there's, excuse me, it's called jet lag. Here in New York, it's been a success. Part of it, for quite a few years, has benefited what was then known as the Grand Prix Mechanics Trust, which I originally formed along with a great man called Ken Tyrrell and another man whose name some of you might know called Walter Hayes. He was the man that was at Ford Motor Company, first of all as a journalist, then as a PR man for Britain, then Europe, then the world, and then became the chairman of Ford of Europe and was one of Henry Ford II's most valuable people. He was a tremendous man, so he was one of the three people that, well, two others than myself came into this trust to help, in those days, mechanics. Because in my day, there was no time limit on when these mechanics had to work. It was an all-nighter from every Grand Prix because these cars were considerably more fragile than the cars of today. When accidents occurred, there were much bigger accidents. The cars were not as secure. The racetracks were considerably more dangerous. And these mechanics had to do an enormous amount of work. They were paid, but they were never paid a huge amount of money. And today, to this very day, one of the great problems that we have is many of those mechanics, now we've got 18 Grand Prix races or 19 Grand Prix races in a season. In my day, there might only be 11 in a season. But now, so many of them, their families get broken up, there's many divorces, because these guys are away so much. When they were, in these days, they were testing much more than they do today. Because in those days there would be Dunlop, there would be Goodyear, there'd be Firestone, later on they're becoming Bridgestone and Michelin and so forth. And the tyre testing was something that we did in faraway lands. We went in the winter time, we would go to South Africa to do all of our testing. So these guys hardly ever got any time off. So that's why there were so many broken marriages. Those broken marriages had a very detrimental effect in later life, because in many cases the home was split and some of them were left with very little money at the end of the day. They had very few pensions in those days. Most of the Formula One teams today have pension schemes. But it's a very transient society, Formula One mechanicking. They'll go from Williams to McLaren, some of them will go to Ferrari and so forth. They would move around. And in my day, it was Tyrrell, really, and BRM before that. So when I realized so many of them were having trouble, I started up and formed this Grand Prix Mechanics Charitable Trust. And it was a small organization. We raised money through taking everybody up to Glen Eagles, where I had a shooting school. And we had a competition. And each year we'd make about £160,000 from that one event. But it gave them a chance to bring their partners, which was beginning to happen, as well as their wives, if you like, not together. But they would come to Glen Eagles, 5-star hotel. They were wined and dined, and they competed in the shoots. And we managed to raise money. We also raised money. We had at Silverstone, the British Racing Drivers Club supported us very well, and they still own the Silverstone Grand Prix circuit, which was the very first Grand Prix ever to be run as a Grand Épreuve in 1950. The first one was run at Silverstone, and that's the very next Grand Prix after Montreal. So it's still going. So we had a day there for several years where the car manufacturers, the Ferraris and the Aston Martins and all the fast cars would give their cars, and we would get the Grand Prix drivers to drive them around the track. So we made another 160 or 180,000 pounds out of that. It's been a struggle to make reasonably big money. Certainly by North American, Canadian levels, it was very small money. The hardship that those mechanics were going through was quite extraordinary in later life. We've still got mechanics that mechanicked for Stirling Moss in the 50s. One died just a few weeks ago who was one of Fangio's mechanics. They had a tremendous CV. They were tremendous people. My own mechanics, I've always said, were better at what they did than I ever was at what I did. And if it hadn't been for people like Roy Topp and Roland Law, and I mean, I can give you the names of all our mechanics. It won't mean a lot to you because they don't get the limelight that the racing drivers do. But if it hadn't been for them, I would never have won 3 World Championships. I won 27 Grand Prix. Not a lot by today's standards, but there was only about 11 Grand Prix a year. Out of 99 races, the batting average was quite good. But to finish first you must finish. My mechanics allowed me to finish more races, to get more podiums, and of course to win the odd race. Without them, I certainly wouldn't be standing up here today. I'd probably be dead. Because in those days, when you drove a Formula One car, if you drove it for a period of 5 years, there was a 2 out of 3 chance you were going to die. Cars were very fragile, racetracks hideously dangerous, very few runoff areas, and when there were runoff areas, they were short. When I started Formula One, it was a 1.5 litre, 1500 cc Formula One. But the year after, they doubled the size of the engine to a 3-litre engine. Suddenly the cars were going so much faster. The entry speeds to the corners so much higher. And therefore the incidents and accidents were so many more, but much heavier. In 1968, for 4 consecutive months, we lost a Grand Prix driver, Jim Clark, the great Jim Clark, fellow Scot, was killed unnecessarily at Hockenheim. No barriers, straight into a forest, was killed instantly. on the 7th of April. The same weekend in May, Ludovico Scarfiotti, no, Mike Spence died, the teammate of Jim Clark. In June, the same weekend, Ludovico Scarfiotti died. The same weekend in July, Joe Slesser died at the French Grand Prix. There was just mayhem going on. And those mechanics, as we call them in those days, they're engineers today. Different world. And for me, there would be probably in the whole team, I suppose would be 12 people. Today here, it's about 111, 112 people to look after 2 ballerina racing drivers. A completely different world. But it was an immensely good group of people, small group, traveling together, spending an awful lot of time together. But they, in later life, ended up having very little. And the trust, we were paying, on one occasion we had to pay for a funeral. They didn't have enough money to have their funeral for their father or their wife or their husband or partner. So it was an extreme case, of course, but there's an awful lot of them today. And as James has already mentioned, sometimes we have to go for private medicine, where the National Health Service in Britain, which is very good, but with a waiting list sometimes ridiculously long. Roy Topp, one of my mechanics, was told he had to wait 18 months to have a hip replacement, and it turned out to be a double hip replacement. So we were able to get him rushed through and get his double hip replacement done in no time at all. But 18 months of the pain that he was suffering, unbearably wrong. So the trust was able to assist in that way. That's just one of them, but there's a heap of them happening all of the time. And of course, they're all getting older. So therefore, age is playing a role. But at the same time, we realized that, of course, Formula One has changed, and we've had to change also. So James and several of the people you'll meet tonight who are trustees of the trust, and it's now called the Grand Prix Trust. We're opening it out a little bit because there are other people other than mechanics now. There's the truckies who drive these transporters all over Europe, and they're usually doing the signaling from the pit. Even though they've still got all the fancy communication systems and the radio communications from the pit to the driver, they're still signaling going out the pit. You'll see that when you watch the Grand Prix. So there's a whole lot of people now who are part of this community. It's bigger, and therefore we've got to try and raise more money all of the time in order to help all of those who come to the point of being in need. So that's what we're doing, and you'll meet many of those people tonight. I hope they're all very good at what they do. Martin Brundle's here tonight, and he's now probably, I think, the best motorsporting commentator that there is in the world. And he's very much a trustee, a Grand Prix driver, knows the business very well, knows the sport very well, and of course is a great contributor, being one of the trustees. Jonathan Wakely's coming. He's the team manager of Red Bull. Brilliant man, brilliant engineer in his own right, great administrator, really runs the team in a great way. They've got a French engine at the moment. What can I say about the French? They were quite friendly with Mary, Queen of Scots, but that was several centuries ago. Since then, they've lost a little bit of their touch. When I had a Matra Formula One car, I thought the French were quite nice. But that was because one man, a man called Jean-Luc Lagardère, was the Director General of Matra. Brilliant man. Started a Formula One team up from nothing, had Ken Tyrrell run it, and we won the World Championship together. The Renault engine today is letting that team down, Red Bull. They won 4 World Championships back-to-back. The man you're going to meet tonight was very much part of that. So Sebastian has been one of the very few racing drivers that's ever won. There's only been one other, Michael Schumacher, that's been able to win 4 back-to-backs. Tremendous team effort. But they in the factory have about 660 people, 680 people for those 2 ballerina racing drivers. And when you see Lewis Hamilton race tomorrow, along with Keke Rosberg, that's jet lag again, his son, they've got about, altogether, there's something like 1,600 people, because they've got an engine to make as well. That's James's girlfriend phoning up from London. She's just reporting the fact she's getting home. His wife called earlier. So where was I? Yes. So therefore, what we're dealing with now is an amazing array of people, an amazing array of skills. That wishbone that you see up here, maybe composite carbon fibre, going through the most excruciating levels of endurance, never mind the stresses of Formula One today with the G-forces that are involved. Quite regularly, 5 Gs. You know, you go up in a fighter plane, you would have a trouble getting to 5 Gs. And this is in a racetrack where there might be 23 corners per lap in some of them. And these wishbones are put through hell over curbs and everything else. And they're still strong and robust and allow those drivers to get these times achieved that they do. And it's signed by probably the greatest designer that motorsport, not just Formula One, motorsport has ever had in Adrian Newey. And this young driver from Australia, Ricardo, is an amazing young talent. So both of them, that is unique to have something of that kind. And it'll last forever. And the wife doesn't have to polish it. Okay, girls, don't start getting upset. We're just not good at polishing. So there's one other little thing we've got. I've got something in my pocket here that's almost priceless. These are Bernie Ecclestone's passes. For one of those, on a weekend like this, to get into the paddock, particularly here in Montreal, which is very tight, because the water's on one side, which was used for the Olympic Games, for the rowing, and the racetracks on the other side, so it's tight for space. Bernie's given 2 of those to the Trust to auction here with you, with Grand Prix Tours. I can assure you he doesn't give many of those away. As it's got Scottish heritage, I think. But they're very, very valuable. So there's 2 of them, and I myself, tomorrow morning, will take the winners of these 2 valuable passes round some of the garages, some of the people, and some of the sites that you can't see from where you're going to be viewing it, even though you've got great viewing. This is the inside lane, and there is no better than this. So later on, when I'm unfortunately overdressed, as you can see, because I've got a function tonight, I've been 47 years with Rolex, so they've got a lot of people here that I'm going to hopefully have dinner with tonight. It's a long way, of course, to come over here for dinner, but a Scotsman will travel a long way for a free dinner. So as the evening continues, James here will be doing the auction. I hope not only these credentials, but I hope you'll bid for some of the other very nice things we have. We haven't got many, but then good things don't come in large numbers. So I hope you'll enjoy the opportunity, whoever wins this, of seeing me tomorrow morning, 10:30, in the pit lane, to take you around and see some of the sites that you would not normally have access to seeing, and I'm sure some of you will be thrilled by it. So I think I've spoken for longer than I should have done. But I hope that you will support this. I hope you'll enjoy this Grand Prix of Canada. It's the Emirates Grand Prix of Canada. They're new sponsors. The Emirates Airlines coming into Formula One. They've only been in for a few months of last year and now here. One of the new big airlines of the world. So they are the sponsors of the event, but all of the major multinational corporations that support Formula One and take advantage of its global reach are here. So enjoy your evening meal, enjoy the rest of the time, and thank you in advance for hopefully supporting a cause which, without the people that we are supporting in times of need, you wouldn't all be seeing a Grand Prix. There's only one in every country, and you've got it this weekend. So I hope you'll help, and I hope you'll enjoy. Thank you very much.
Sir Jackie Stewart, ladies and gentlemen. So let's bring another guest on the stage, and another trustee, and a man who also is part of the racing royalty, really, a Le Mans winner, a man who started well over 150 Grand Prix, many podiums, Le Mans winner, as I said, and also, of course, teammate to one of the greatest drivers ever, Michael Schumacher, and an adversary in Formula 3 before they came into Formula 1 of the one and only, the great Ayrton Senna. He is, of course, Martin Brundle. I'm going to ask you some questions. I didn't get any questions into Jackie, but I'm going to ask you some questions.
Well, I'd just like to say thank you to Jackie. I've been lucky enough to listen to the great Sir Jackie Stewart since 1984, when he took me under his wing when I joined the Tyrrell team. Of course, Jackie's famous team that he was with, winning so many championships and races. And it's just always a privilege, Jackie, to hear you speak. And there's always a new story and a new twist. So well done, and well done for everything you've done for the Trust too. But go for it, James. What are we going to talk about?
So we'll get on to what you would like. Let's sit down. Okay. We'll get on to what you would like Formula One to look like from 2017 onwards, because there's a lot of talk about that, as you're probably aware at the moment, and we're heading towards a World Council in a month's time, aren't we, which they're going to try and put some proposals forward. We'll talk about that in a moment, but first let's just box off qualifying today. What did you think of it? Were you a bit disappointed that Rosberg couldn't challenge at the end, Hamilton? Rosberg
seemed a bit out of sorts, and he was complaining about his tyres' non-uniformity or something, which I can only assume means they weren't round. I don't know. Or out of balance or something like that. But they knew before qualifying, they said, yeah, we knew these tyres weren't going to be quite as good, but it's very much a black art, your tyres. It's a chemical reaction between the rubber and the racetrack, and it's temperature related. It's the core of the tyre, it's the surface of the tyre. We see drivers moving around trying to warm them up. We saw a driver crash this morning into the wall trying to warm his tyres up because he inadvertently opened the DRS, drag reduction system rear wing, and smashed the car into the wall, Felipe Nasser. But yeah, so it's a bit of an inexact science with tyres, despite a team like Mercedes. Jackie's told you some of the numbers. They're going to spend in that team well over £200 million a year to put those cars on the track 20 times and a bit of testing, which is an extraordinary number, isn't it? And when push comes to shove, it's 4 pieces of rubber, the only thing that touches the racetrack, and we still have an old valve in there as well, don't we, to control the air pressure, even though those pressures are transmitted all around the world, actually, as the cars are going around the track. So quali was quite good today. What it has done is generated a fascinating grid for you to watch tomorrow for the start, because at the back we've got Sebastian Vettel with engine problems and a penalty for passing another car, just cruising past it at something around 310 kilometers per hour by the looks of it. So he's at the back. Felipe Massa had an engine problem. He's at the back. Max Verstappen's had penalties for having a fresh engine, which seems crazy to me. You've already got penalties going on, and then he's got to have another 10 seconds.
So he's starting in Ottawa, I think, isn't he?
Yeah, it's crazy. So what we've got are a lot of cars out of position on the grid. And then some up front that have done particularly well. The two Lotus cars are up there, Bottas as well, and Raikkonen having the battle of the Finns. So we're in for a great race.
We are indeed. And do you think, the key question I think is, from what we saw in practice on Friday afternoon, and obviously, you know, you do this he works for Sky in the UK, so they analyse everything in minute detail. They do every single track session on the television there, which not only goes out in the UK, but all around other countries in the world as well. From what you saw in those free practice sessions on Friday, do you think Ferrari had better race pace than Mercedes? Do you think that if Raikkonen can do something bold on the strategy, he might be able to beat the two Mercedes tomorrow?
Well, of course, they won in Malaysia because they were able to lap at the same speed as the Mercedes, but they needed one less pit stop. So that was a slam dunk for them, actually. I think they've got a car that looks as if it might be fast enough to at least keep the Mercedes honest all afternoon, but I don't know if they've got a car fast enough to beat them. I would have said if Vettel was up front, so the pair of them could work in tandem, and would have helped significantly. But I don't think the Mercedes are going to run and hide from Ferrari tomorrow. That's for sure. And Williams are very punchy. They're very confident with their speed because again they've got a car out of place. So we saw the Mercedes win at a canter in Barcelona by 45 seconds. I don't think that's going to happen tomorrow.
I know you're a keen student of the psychological side of having been a Grand Prix driver yourself and for many, many years. Hamilton was fascinating, wasn't he, coming into this weekend? Because I don't think, has there ever been a more public humiliation in terms of the way you lose a Grand Prix than what happened in Monaco 2 weeks ago? And he so badly needed to bounce back, and he needed to deliver that qualifying lap today, didn't he? Did you feel that he was like elated that he hadn't actually cracked when it mattered?
Well, it's the first time we've seen him smile all weekend. He's had a face like a wet Monday morning with a dental appointment, and so the words were coming out of his mouth about I don't care, I'm not thinking about Monaco, it doesn't matter, I'm thinking about the next race. But I don't think his demeanour matched those words. He was a lot more cheerful after he stuck it on pole comfortably. And he will always, in my view, on any championship season, he will always beat Nico Rosberg because he's slightly hungrier, and he'll be more consistently there. The three greatest drivers, in my view, on the grid are Hamilton, Vettel, and Alonso, because they're the guys that are. There's some young pretenders coming along as well, doing a great job. But they're the guys that don't have off days. That's the key thing, I think, that makes the difference between the great and the merely very good. Unfortunately, Alonso hasn't got the machinery to the McLaren barely gets out of its own way at the moment, unfortunately.
Yeah, the teams call that repeatability, don't they? It's like you could take a nice photograph of a sunset. You're not quite sure how you did it. You certainly couldn't do it again if you tried. And the great art of these guys is that they can nail it, and then you can do it exactly the same thing week in, week out, repeatability, as you say. And you mentioned some young pretenders, because I don't know how excited you've been by Max Verstappen and Carlos Sainz, two drivers at Toro Rosso who everyone thought Verstappen was going to be the next Senna, but Sainz is actually doing a pretty good job as well, isn't he?
Yeah, I mean, Verstappen's just 17 years old, of course. Sainz is 20 or 21 now. And then we've got Bottas, we've got Danny Ricciardo, we've got a lot of great young drivers. As always, there's always somebody coming along to fill the boots and to get the job done. But yeah, when you look at that kind of talent, I think despite smashing his car up this morning, Felipe Nasser's done a great job in the Sauber as well. So lots of excitement there, and you just wonder how far Verstappen can get. I mean, he's got so little experience, yet he's doing so well. He's showing such great speed. I mean, he left an indelible mark on the paddock with his speed in Monaco. Sadly, he left an indelible mark on the barriers as well in the race. But he'll learn from that. He'll make those mistakes, and I think he's done the right thing by not going, "I'm sorry, everybody, I won't do it again." He's gone, "No, I'm not going to apologise to anybody." And he's one tough little cookie, and I respect him for that, and I'm enjoying watching him. But you're right, Carlos Sainz, in a way, has done even better job.
I have to ask you, you were a teammate of Michael Schumacher, arguably one of the greatest racing drivers who ever lived, and you went toe-to-toe in that classic Formula 3 season in the UK in 1983 against Ayrton Senna, who, in my opinion, is the greatest racing driver who ever lived. Just tell us a bit about those two men.
Yeah, I raced against Ayrton for 11 years through his F1 career, and we met in Formula 3, which actually he won the championship in the last few laps of the last race. But it elevated us both into F1. He was going to F1 anyway, to be clear. But it certainly was a fascinating year. And then I had Michael Schumacher as a teammate at Benetton. They were completely different characters. People often ask me to compare them and who I think was best. For me, Ayrton Senna was the most gifted racing driver I ever raced against and that I've ever witnessed out on the track. He had a God-given speed and a sixth sense of where the grip was before the corner, not in the middle of it, not just afterwards when he'd experienced it. Michael Schumacher, I think, was the most complete racing driver I've seen, in that I don't think he had Senna's pure gift and feel, but he just worked away at it, and he got the team around him. He made the car his own, didn't he? He made everything around him his own. He could be a bit dirty as a driver sometimes through his career, but then, Senna had Prost off as well, didn't he, a few times? So none of us were angels, and none of them are today. So quite different characters, actually, but they achieved their things. But, the tragedy for me is Ayrton Senna is dead, and I was driving in the race that day, and one of the most awful days, and I could regale you for half an hour about the tragedy and the drama of that May Day 1994 when Senna died. And of course Michael Schumacher is in a very bad state of health after he hit his head on a rock 18 months ago skiing. So the sheer tragedy and waste of that is such a shame. But it's very hard to compare drivers over the decades. The cream always rises to the top. The best always get in the best cars, they win the championships. But how do you compare Fangio and Moss and Sajaki and Jim Clark and Schumacher, Senna, Prost? We've had so many great drivers. It's really hard, and I think it's a personal opinion. There's no right and wrong here. It's just a personal feeling, and I'm sure many of you will have other favourites where you loved Mika Hakkinen, I don't know, Nelson Piquet, Nigel Mansell. Maybe you were motivated by those people.
Well, certainly in my case, it was Gilles Villeneuve back in the day. It's great. I love this track because it's named after him. Final thought, because I know you have to dash, and thank you again for making time this evening. We are talking a lot at the moment inside Formula One and outside Formula One, fan surveys and all kinds of conversations about what we want Formula One to be going forward. 27 has been set as the start of a new era, reimagining this sport. If you were the benevolent dictator who's running Formula One and you could write down a list of things, tell me what a 2017 Martin Brundle Formula One car would look like.
That's a very long answer to an extent, but I think I can shortcut and go right. We want closer racing. We want cars wheel to wheel, nose to tail. We want the best drivers showing their skills. We want them challenged, and I think we're coming at it completely in the wrong direction. We've got to make the cars able to follow each other and to with better tyres and different aerodynamics, and I'm pretty clear in my head how we would do that, and I've said it for 20 years now. I think we've been going completely the wrong way with that. Then inevitably you have to introduce some artificial stuff, because the designers and the engineers can't unlearn things that they know about aerodynamics and about tyres and about suspension. And whatever the type of racing, there are so many ways of artificially spicing up the racing, if you like. With the drag reduction rear wing, for example, high degradation tyres. Some championships use weight ballast, success ballast. Others do reverse grids. There are so many, refueling was mentioned recently about spicing up the racing. I think you might need, a little bit of that, but if you just improve the racing, and we're doing a lot of fan surveys at the moment, which frankly I don't agree with, because I think it says, hey, we're in trouble, and hey, we don't know how to fix it, help. And I think we do know how to fix it, we just don't have the mechanism in place in Formula One to do that. We just want to see great drivers wheel to wheel, don't we, and challenge. And we want to see them getting out of the cars looking wrecked, not getting out and moaning that they couldn't push the car because the tyres wouldn't stick with them. And I think also when you're analysing things like this, most people have got an opinion about maybe what's wrong with any sport, but we're talking Formula One this evening, and I'm so pleased that you're able to make this race. It's one of the best on the calendar, and I know you're dotted around the track, but this is a very special event because the cars are so close to the barriers, and the track is bumpy, and it's just not a perfect racetrack, which makes it good racing. But when you're analysing something, I think you've got to start with what's right about Formula One. If you look at the incredible crowds here, you look at the TV audiences, only the World Cup and the Olympics beats Formula One around the world, and they take place every 4 years. We're 20 times a year. We have an incredible momentum. We have history. We have heritage. We have, so much to talk about, such a spectacle that I think we, first and foremost, you need to work out what's good about it, and then be careful what you change. Be careful what you wish for, I would say, after that.
Yeah, because it is a pretty exciting field at the end of the day. I mean, you've highlighted a lot of the drivers we've got at the moment. It's certainly as exciting as it's been for many years. You were racing, of course, with Senna, Prost, Mansell, Piquet, some great drivers. And
Lauda.
Yeah. And what's also, I think, is great about Formula One is, Sir Jackie's here, Niki Lauda's here, another 3-time champion. Jacques Villeneuve's wandering around the paddock. You work with Damon Hill. The sport's really good at keeping its champions close and having them there, as you say. So it's always in touch with its heritage, isn't it?
We can't let it go, I think. It's tragic in that respect. But
You've actually been a broadcaster longer than a racer now, is that right?
Oh, much. I've done about 520, 530 Grand Prix now, but more as a broadcaster than I did 158 as a driver. So,
You're coming up 20 years as a broadcaster, right?
Yeah.
You get less for murder.
Yeah. So, but I still love it, and I'm still very motivated by it. But, yeah, absolutely. It's, I think, not every ball game you have in America is a cracker, is it? You sit through not every soccer match is a 5-4 last-minute thriller, and not every Formula One race is great. But then when they do turn out, well, as we've seen here in Canada a few times, then they are thrillers.
Thank you so much for making time in your schedule. I know you've got to leg it. So Martin Brundle, ladies and gentlemen.
Thank you very much. Are these mine? Are these mine, James? Yeah.
Fantastic. Great to hear from him. Okay, now, you want to meet a man who's won 4 world championships consecutively. The guy who also won world championships with Michael Schumacher back in the Benetton days. This modern Formula One is a very complicated sport, as Jackie has mentioned. When he was around racing for Tyrrell, I think he had a handful of mechanics that travelled the world together. They went back to the factory, and it was the same handful of mechanics, plus a tea lady, a couple of admin staff, and a few other people in the paint shop, and that was pretty much it. Now, it's a business. It's a huge business, and to get 2 cars on the racetrack 19 times a year involves hundreds of people. And one of the guys who makes one of the most successful teams in Formula One tick is the sporting director and team manager of Red Bull Racing. He's come to talk to us tonight about his life, how it all works, and some of the drivers he's worked with. Please welcome Jonathan Wheatley. Jonathan, again, thank you very much for finding time in your schedule. It can't be easy to get away from the racetrack on a Saturday night, but I suppose here in Montreal with a 1 o'clock qualifying, it's a bit easier than some places.
Yeah, well, first of all, tough act to follow. Jackie Stewart and Martin Brundle, so hopefully I won't bore you too much.
They're just your warm-up act, right?
Yeah. Actually, the later acts get paid more money, don't they? I'm sure that's
not tonight, sorry.
I'm sure that's not true. It's tricky getting away from the track. Maybe I should explain a little bit about my role. I don't just manage the travelling team that you see here. I don't know if you've ever seen some of the support events we do when we're on top of a tower block doing donuts in a Formula One car. driving in through supermarkets, all this kind of stuff. I head up the teams that do that. So I mean, even
You don't get to drive the car through the supermarket.
no. Even when I'm here, I'm sort of looking after events that are going on all around the world. Plus, I'm responsible for a few things going on at the factory. So Saturday night, we may be finished. The cars may have their covers on, qualifying's done. But I've been on the phone to Dubai, and I still found time to run the track though. So
What was your time?
it wasn't good. I did 2 laps in 48 minutes.
All right. It's quite flat here, isn't it?
It didn't feel flat to me. It felt uphill the whole way.
So we thought it would be really cool to just share. We've had 2 Grand Prix drivers, and obviously you've won 4 consecutive Formula One World Championships. You must be so proud of that. I mean, just to hear it being said, it's unbelievable what you did.
Yeah, I've been very lucky. We started in Formula One at the same time, James and I, 1991, if I remember for you correctly. I worked at Benetton then. The first time I worked on a racing car was Roberto Moreno was a driver, and then within 2 races, Michael Schumacher was our driver. So I worked with Michael right the way through there. Incredibly lucky. You know, we had 2 championship seasons there. Always regret that we only got the drivers one year and not the constructors as well. So very, very lucky. 3 championships at Benetton. Then Benetton was bought by Renault, some of you may remember, and a young Spanish guy came to us, Fernando Alonso. Managed to win another couple of championships with him. And then, at Red Bull, where my hair was your colour when I started there, and then 4 championships later. I've still got it, but it's very difficult to describe, I think, the level that you have to operate at for 4 years. I mean, that first year you win the championship is the easiest year. You know, staying at that level, I mean, I'm sure you're all very successful in business and what have you, know what it's like, but to stay at that level, but not just that, keep hundreds of people at the same level, that's where the magic is in Formula One at the moment. You know, it's not just the drivers, it's the guys putting the cars together, the guys loading the freight, bringing the cars to the circuit. Everyone has to be at the highest level.
And just keeping the team together must be difficult as well, because the more success you have, the more presumably Ferrari and Mercedes and these other guys come with the checkbooks looking to hire and poach away your best staff. And obviously Red Bull isn't short of a few dollars, but so they can always manage to hold on.
Keep buying the product, keep buying the cans.
They can always manage to hold on to their key people, but that must be a massive, massive struggle.
Well,
I mean, you nearly lost Newey a couple of times, but he managed to keep hold of him, right?
Yeah. I like to think his heart's with us, you know. I think, you know, I worked for Renault. Christian gave me a call, said, we're doing something exciting here called Red Bull Racing. Do you want to come and be a part of it? I said, well, I want to, you know, only if I can create a team that I want to work in and I really want to enjoy working at every day. Okay, and I really think the secret to the success in keeping people is to create an environment where people absolutely love coming to work every day. You know, Red Bull, we're not corporate, we're not that same kind of team, you know. We don't, we're not like McLaren and the way they go about their racing. It's a lot of fun with us. And also, I think you've got to create an environment where people, you know, we all make mistakes, all of us do every day. You know, they're very public mistakes in Formula One. And I think you have to be really careful how you handle that and make people feel very comfortable that they can put their hand up and say, do you know what, made a mistake, and get away with it. We do an awful lot. I have 2 doctors that travel the world with us. We have a chiropractor that travels the world with us. Back in the UK, there's a couple of physiotherapists, and these are to look after the mechanics, not to look after the driver. You know, we you know, we take 6. We are limited to having 60 staff with us that can work on the cars. You can't have somebody go ill. You know, he does a job. It's a full-time job. You know, 15, 18 hours a day, he can't be ill. So, yeah, we create a wonderful environment, and I'm a great boss.
Sounds like the Google of Formula One. Is don't be evil, isn't it? Right.
I don't get paid enough. I'm sat here thinking...
Well, just give us an idea of the scale of it. I mean, you came in the early 90s when there was, I don't know how many, 100 and something employees in a team like Benetton. And how many people have you got now at the Milton Keynes base of Red Bull Racing?
Officially, or what I'm allowed to say? No, we've got well over 800 people now. And if you bear in mind, that's just chassis gearbox. That's nothing to do with the engine side of the operation. When I started, there were 125 people at Benetton, and we used to travel about 20 2, including the drivers. Now, okay, it's a completely different operation. We have 60 operational staff, but we bring our own catering facilities, marketing, which are exempt from that 60 personnel. We travel generally to a flyaway race around about 100 people, the whole team, including drivers and everybody. We have in Europe, we probably bring about another 20 marketing and catering staff. We have a very big facility to cater for all our guests in Europe. But of course, the big numbers, and I don't know if you guys work in kilograms or tons, but we bring to just about every race about 35,000 kilograms, 35 tons of air freight and 20 tons of sea freight. And what that is, what you actually palpably see when you look at us in the circuit is, if you imagine everything to do with the car, we fly by air, and everything to do with the equipment and the support, we put in sea freight, because air freight costs are astronomical. But of course, 60 of us have to unpack all of that. We have generally a 2-day setup, so 48 hours. The guys tend to do, it's a bit grim, they tend to do 18, 20-hour days for 2 days on the bounce while they're setting up. And I guess the biggest thing is, obviously you see us operate, we're a lot of people, we make a lot of noise, well, maybe not so much noise nowadays, but we're a big spectacle. But you see the checkered flag Sunday night and you probably think, well, that's it, everyone's gone. But actually we have generally about 9 or 10 hours work after that before we've got all this stuff packed up, cars stripped down, reported all the faults on the cars, and finally get to go back to the hotel or the nightclub.
And yeah, there is the odd bit of nightclub, isn't there? There's definitely, especially with Red Bull, when you came in, you used to have like parties that cost like $1 million.
No, I stopped that. I'm not the most
really?
popular.
You're not popular then? That's interesting. And of course, the mechanics, it's quite transient, right? I mean, you've told me, compared to when you started, you get these guys that come in now, they stick around for 2 or 3 years, but it's just physically too hard for them. 20-year-olds, it's just like, this is great, but I'm not really sure this is something I want to do long term.
No, I think once again, because I started as a mechanic, I've been very lucky in my career, the drivers and the teams that I've worked for, and I've seen how teams work that I didn't particularly like, if you like, but you can do all of that, you can put all these things in place, but, we tend to take guys, you don't take the really young guys, you want people who've been in motor racing for a little while already, they know it's hard work, they know that, it's early starts, late nights, they know you're going to mess them around from time to time and make that, it's going to be stressful but an exciting job. But they start, you have a family, they spend more and more time on FaceTime back to, and you can see it in their eyes, they want to spend a bit more time at home. I mean, the silly old sods like you and I, there's not that many now that are sort of committed full-time. I'll be doing this job until I retire, right?
And he's got triplets, can you imagine? How old are they now?
They're 12, yeah, going to be 13 in September.
That's probably why you want to
meet
get
the
away.
wife, she's quite a woman, because I've not been there.
Yeah, a round of applause for his wife. That is what you call an unsung hero of Formula One. Jonathan Wheatley's wife.
And absolutely. And, it's interesting. You ask about what makes a team, why do people stay with a team? It's when, somebody has a small problem at home and a lot of teams say, well, tough luck. This is your job. You've got to do your job. You have to come, you get on a plane. It doesn't matter if you've got this fuss at home. We don't do that, I won't tell you the whole story, but we've had one guy's missed this race altogether, and we've just taken the pain on the race team. But, he's been able to spend a little bit more time with his family. We got another guy in another situation. We flew him out a little bit late, one of our key guys. But, it's all these little things that make a difference.
Yeah, and that's the difference, I guess, in the end between keeping them and winning and losing. Let's talk a little bit about where you are at the moment, because you've got 2 fantastic drivers, and from what I could see out on the circuit when I was watching this morning, a fantastic-looking car. It goes through that first chicane beautifully. But unfortunately, when I look at the speed trap, I see that Kvyat is 14th at 330 kilometers an hour, and Ricciardo is 16th at 326. And right up the top there is Grosjean, 340. So I think I can figure out the reason why you're not winning races at the moment. But are you going to turn it around?
Yeah, not tomorrow. Not unless it rains. Please rain. Look, I mean, I don't think any of you that follow the sport would be at all surprised to know the answer for some of our challenges. I mean, our engine supplier, they're not just an engine supplier; they're a real partner of our teams. We have great relationship with them, and it's as painful as it is for us to go through it, for them to go through it as well is an extraordinarily difficult process. Very proud people, the French as well. So look, we're working really, really hard with them. We're supporting them as well as we can. It's painful. You come to a race like this. I wish you'd put a few more corners in, a few less straights, to be quite honest. We know it's going to be difficult. We know there's circuits we're going to go to this year. We're going to be very, very average. But you take each race as it comes. We're a lot more reliable now. First few races were, frankly, embarrassing. Now we're getting a little bit closer. We had come off a good result in Monaco. I never thought I'd say it, but if two Mercedes finish, two Ferraris finish, two Williams finish, if you can get in the top 10, you've done really well. So for us, we're kind of hoping that towards the end of the year we'll introduce some engines with a little bit more power, a little bit more drivability, and hopefully 2016 we'll be right back up there again.
Are you excited about the two drivers you have at the moment?
Do you know, I get excited. I love my job. I've worked with some amazing drivers. I can't tell you the situation today, but the Russian lad came running out of his... Well, I'll tell you. just going into qualifying, I had to go up and talk to them about something really serious, and he came chasing me around up in the room, completely naked, trying to hug me. This is before qualifying, and he did all right in the end. But
I don't know what you did to him, but it worked.
I did nothing to him. But the Kvyat, you want to see what he's doing in the high-speed stuff. I mean, he is properly brave. And Daniel's an extraordinary talent. And once again, give him even a chance to get alongside another driver on the brakes. And I think he's unmatched in that respect. And of course, they both come through the Red Bull program, as did Sebastian Vettel, which is fantastic work that Helmut Marko's been doing.
Absolutely. So you worked with Michael Schumacher, Fernando Alonso, and Sebastian Vettel.
And Martin Brundle.
And Martin Brundle, yeah, of course, yeah. At Benetton. At pretty similar ages as well, I guess. Schumacher was roughly 22, 23 when he came in and won some championships. Vettel was 22, 3, 4 when he was winning his titles. Alonso was 23, 4 when he was winning with you. So more or less at the same sort of stages of their careers. Compare them for us, because everybody here loves the sport and loves to know a bit of insight with the drivers. In terms of what they were like or how they drive, or just a few thoughts of those three drivers.
Well, I'll tell you what makes them all very similar. First of all, I think they have an ability to knit a team around them. An extraordinary ability to motivate people to give their very best to that particular driver. I think the other thing that they all share, other than this otherworldly talent that we can all see, is, over an entire race season, you've got wet qualifying sessions, you've got sessions where things don't go quite right, you have problems, sometimes you don't do as much running as you want. These guys always come out on top. And the other ones have always got an excuse. They're still extraordinary drivers, but other drivers always have an excuse. I didn't quite get this, couldn't quite see very well because I wasn't quite on the right tyre. But, the difference between a world champion and, Lewis is maybe yesterday's not a great example, but these guys tend to be out in all conditions. They don't normally have accidents, and they always get that time in qualifying.
And do they look after the guys? I mean, I know Schumacher was legendary for it. He used to have a list of when each person's birthday was, and he would get them
German.
But it's true. He must have got you. Was he doing that back in the Benetton days, or did it something he learned later?
Yeah, I mean, I'm joking about it, but Michael's a friend, and what he's going through at the moment is extraordinary. But he he knows my children's names and my wife's name, and you know, and he still remembers that. He wouldn't have to remember that. He remembers it, you know. And Sebastian's the same. You know, Sebastian's this wonderfully warm young man. He really is. And you know, as is Fernando. You know, the nice thing is when you work in this business, every now and then a photographer gets a picture, and it means a lot to me. It wouldn't necessarily to anyone else, but you get a picture taken of you just having a private conversation and having a laugh with these guys. And you remember, do you know, he was asking me because one of my children wasn't well, you know. So they're humans as well, and they work incredibly well in the teams, and that's part of what makes them quite, well, frankly, so interesting and charming.
And were you sad to see Sebastian go?
Yeah, I mean, he's family, but I completely understand it. You know, I completely understand it. You can't have a guy, you know, clearly his motivation wasn't 100% there last year. He confided in me in Bahrain test. We tested in Bahrain before the start of the year. We didn't do many kilometres. We had a even challenging pre-season last year. And these cars at that stage, you know, things will change, but they didn't perform like the V8 cars. You know, the V8 car was, it'd smash you in the back as you came out of the corners, and when you braked, you were hanging off of the seat belts, you know, and it was a physical, hard car to drive. And these are hard for a different reason, you know, but he wasn't feeling it, and he needed to change everything.
Yeah, absolutely. Does anybody have any questions that they would like to ask Jonathan? It's not every day you've got a guy that runs a Formula One team, moves them all around the world, in front of you. So have a think about it. While you're thinking about it, I just want to ask you the same question I asked Martin, which is 2017. We're reimagining the sport. Martin's got pretty strong views about what he thinks the sport should be like. What do you think? I mean, you've been in it and worked on all these different kinds of cars. What do you think a proper Formula One car should be?
Okay. I'm not going to be corporate. I'm going to be completely honest. I think they should have a huge engine, V10 or V12 engine with a serious capacity. I think when you start them, they should be terrifying to everyone in the garage and everyone around them. I think they should have a lot of mechanical grip. You know, not aerodynamic grip. I think most of the aerodynamic grip should come from the floor. So the wings are basically things you put stickers on to get money. And I don't think you need to do much more than that, to be honest. But, you know, the trouble is, somebody at some point decided that Formula One needed to be relevant to road cars, and you know, personally I don't get that. I think we live in a very restricted society with speed limits and speed cameras, and you can't do this, you can't do that, hybrid this, we're all paying too much tax because of our cars or emissions. I think you want to go at the weekend and go, wow, look at these guys, they're mental.
Well, I agree with you actually, and so does quite a lot of other people in the room, clearly. Someone said to me the other day that, you know, Formula One, what we want Formula One to be is extreme. You know, everything's extreme. We've got 800 people. That's ridiculous, working for a Formula One team. You know, we travel all over the world to 19 different places. That's absurd. You know, the cars should be extreme. It's a form of escapism, isn't it? They should be almost impossible to drive unless you are the most skilled driver in the world.
Well, I think they should be difficult. I think it should be physical to drive. I think, you know, I wouldn't mind seeing a return to a manual gearbox. I mean, not an H-gate gearbox, but a sequential gearbox, because you bring 4 less people. You'd probably take 3 million out of your budget a year because you don't need to do these seamless shift gearboxes. So the technology is wonderful, but I'm not really sure that, you know, when you're actually watching the spectacle, that makes much of a difference, to be quite honest. You know, having said that, we had some fantastic racing last year. We really did, you know, and the good news is the sport recognises it needs to do something a bit different. But you know, when I first started doing Formula One, we had something called pre-qualifying. I don't know if any of you were old enough to remember that, but you had so many teams, you didn't know, you know, they were racked outside the garage, and you had to run 2 heats to decide who qualified. I mean, and they were using Cosworth engines and Judd engines. I think, you know, the other thing is we're very, very heavily dependent on manufacturers at the moment, engine manufacturers, car manufacturers, and I think that's tricky, because if somebody decides they want to do Formula One anymore, then where are you going to get an engine from? Where are you going to get one of these from? I don't know. So, anyway, we've discussed this an awful lot over glasses of red wine.
I was going to say we should have something to put the world to rights. We're going to auction these things in a moment, and can you just tell us a bit of the background of this, which you very kindly brought all the way out to Canada to auction this evening?
Yeah, we never give those away. Because they contain, the way we make that wishbone is unique to Red Bull Racing. But, I have an association with this charity. It's very close to my heart, and we try to do a significant gift. So this is something we would call a significant gift, and not something that we do normally for anyone. Signed by Adrian Newey and Daniel Ricciardo. I think, it's a technical car part, and the fact that it's been signed by Adrian, I think, is quite something as well.
And which year is it?
Oh, blimey, you're asking me that now. I think that's an RB5. I think that's a 2006 car.
2006. Fantastic. Excellent. Before Jonathan goes, because he has to leg it in a second, does anybody have a question that they would like to ask him from the floor? Or have you heard enough? Yes, sir.
What would it take to replace the engine package that you're running with a different manufacturer's package?
Oh, sorry, for exactly the same power unit a complete redesign, basically. The gearbox, chassis, where the fuel pump is in the chassis, how much cooling the engine requires, how much cooling the electronic system and the system requires. It's not like you can just take one engine out and put another one in. You would need to know about that. I would have thought about 4 months before you launched your new car.
Yes, gentlemen.
Well, have you got one? I'll leave you my business card.
Yes, sir.
Given that you've got two very good drivers at the moment, there are two young gentlemen in Red Bull in the other team. Which of those two are you going to encourage to come forward?
That's a good question.
Verstappen or Sainz?
Well, I've worked with one Verstappen already.
You worked with his dad, right?
Yeah, 1994, yeah. Worked with Jos. Yeah, Jos the boss. An amazing talent. I think that it was a shame for Jos that he ended up against Michael Schumacher at the very peak of his powers, to be honest. But, I mean, they're great. I mean, both of those drivers, like I say, I talked about the Red Bull Junior program a little bit earlier. And I'm not banging the Red Bull drum, but my God, look at the drivers that have come through that in the last little while. And I think, honestly, it's a meritocracy, isn't it? One of them's going to rise to the top. And at the moment, I couldn't tell you which one. I mean, in Verstappen, we have a driver who nobody's told him where you can't overtake, so he just overtakes everywhere.
And Sainz actually has been really impressive, I think. I mean, I think people thought it was all going to be about Verstappen because he got this great build-up. But Sainz is much quicker than I thought he was going to be. And he's kind of calm and consistent as well. I mean, coming through from the pit lane in Monaco to get a point. I mean, Michael came through from the back, the famous 2006 year, and finished 5th or 6th, I think, in a Ferrari. So to do it in a Toro Rosso and finish 10th is a pretty heroic effort, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean... I think at the moment they're both showing an extraordinary talent. You've got Max, who I said he can seem to overtake anyone, anywhere, at any time. But Carlos is putting together race weekends. He's putting together the whole package at the moment. And I think it's really exciting. It's great. It's a great story for the sport as well, bringing these young kids in. You know?
Yeah, no, it's very, very good. Anybody else got a question for Jonathan before he legs it? Yes, sir.
Quick question. Your relationship with Toro Rosso. When Red Bull was having their problems, Toro Rosso seemed to be doing very well. Why was that not happening?
Which year are we talking about? Look, when you are separated as we are, you know, when you share the same power unit, we work very closely with them on some aspects of car design. They've got very good drivers. We've got very good drivers. You're looking at a couple of tenths, you know, separating the cars on a good day, maybe, you know, which is not unusual for that part of the grid, that pack of the grid. You might have half a second separating 6 cars. Sometimes, you know, they just get the tyres to work a little bit better. Sometimes the package just works that little bit better that weekend. But what you generally find at the moment, I think, I'm pretty confident that we're able to outrace them, though sometimes we do end up out-qualified by them. And that's just down to car architecture, car design, and really it's all about how they use the tyres.
Okay, yes, sir?
Jonathan, you suggested suggested maybe going back to manual gear shifts, but I seem to recall that that was one of the points of going to something more automatic was to avoid engine blowups from missed shifts. How do you make that work?
You can just put a clutch strategy in, so it would open the clutch to not do it. I think the point I was making is I wouldn't be at all worried about going back to a manual gearbox. And I think, you know, where the engine's cheaper, you know, maybe there should be a rule you have to use at least 10 a year, or you have to use a new one every race. But you know, if they oh God, it wasn't that long ago with the V10 engines, you put a new one in every day, and we weren't talking about how crazy it was. You just rebuilt the one that came out and put it in a couple of weeks later.
And these engines are much more expensive than those ones were, and you only get 4 a year of them.
Yeah, and we shouldn't lose sight of the fact that these engines are absolutely extraordinary. They're unbelievable. You know, I'm not sat here saying that they're rubbish. They're not. You know, my heart says great big noisy engine, but they are incredible pieces of engineering. I mean, they only use 100 litres of fuel to do a Grand Prix. They'll have 900 horsepower soon, easily. You know, actually, maybe Mercedes already has, but.
And they'll be at 1,000 before too long of the normal development, won't they?
Yeah, and we're trying to make them noisier.
Well, is that going to happen? Is there a way?
Yeah, but you know, anyone here who knows the first thing about engineering knows that you put a great big turbo on the exhaust, you're going to make it quiet. So what we're trying to do is to run the wastegate pipe out, you know, separate to that, and keep the wastegate open so that you hear a lot more engine noise. It won't sound like the V8s.
No, I never would. Any more before we wrap it up with Jonathan? Yeah, last one. Thank you.
Red Bull now have two teams in Formula One. We're losing teams left, right, and centre. It seems sometimes, perhaps where they do go. But there's been rumours that Red Bull might not continue if they don't win, which I suppose I kind of understand to some extent, but down to another level. If Red Bull pulls out, what does Formula One look like?
Well, I think it's a two-part question, really, isn't it? I guess. First of all, we also have a Grand Prix. You know, Red Bull they own the Austrian, the Red Bull Ring. So our interest not only is in being a competitor every weekend with two teams and a proper junior program, you know, Red Bull are a junior team, we're giving young drivers an opportunity. We also want bums on seats in Austria. So we want to be putting on a show that is also going to make that event make money. Otherwise, we're not making money there, we're not making money here, and we're not competitive anyway. Now, the wonderful thing about Red Bull is it's owned by a man who's passionate about racing. So yeah, you're going to get you're going to get days like we all do where you want to, you know, forget everything. But ultimately, he's a racer. So I can't see that happening in any way, shape, or form, to be honest. And you know, if two teams pulled out of Formula One would survive. Formula One just survives.
So you think it's a little bit like Ferrari? Every once in a while, just throws its toys around and says, "I don't want to play anymore."
Yeah, I feel like it. Nobody listens when I say it. That's the only difference. I want to pull out.
They're all tied until 2020, aren't they? So that's hopefully going to see the way. And because there's a lot of talk at the moment about, you know, if some of the smaller teams don't make it, that maybe they might have customer cars or different kind of models. And don't forget, we've got the Haas team coming in next year with Ferrari, close collaboration. Yeah. Haas fans at the back. They've already got fans. They haven't even started racing yet.
Well, my dilemma is I've got to stop liking them now because I've always liked Haas and everything they've done in the States. They've got to become the enemy now.
Yeah, exactly. And they should probably come in at a reasonable level, shouldn't they, given the way that they're collaborating with Ferrari?
Is that a leading question?
No, I didn't mean it in that way, actually, although people do say about this wind tunnel thing. But no, I mean, it's
wind tunnel thing, yeah. Yeah, I mean, they're going to have the might of Ferrari helping them at an engineering level. I mean, that's what we want, isn't it? We want more competitive teams in Formula One. So it's a good news story.
It certainly is. Okay, I hope you're as happy this time next year with Haas somewhere north of 15th on the grid. Just finished one. Oh, they'll do all right. They're going about it the right way, I think, and they're going to
do a lot more than that.
They've got a great business model, so they're doing it for the right reasons. It's not. That's the other thing. It's not like Caterham, Marussia, some of these other teams that kind of came in. They tried to do it all themselves without any help from anybody else, which obviously was proven to be a big mistake. and they didn't really have a plan, whereas the Haas guys are trying to sell machine tools all over the world and use the platform of Formula One races to have business and bring business in, and that makes perfect sense to me. I don't know about you, but anyway, it's been great. Thank you so much for making time in your schedule.
Thank you, everyone. Nice to meet you all.
Jonathan Wheatley, ladies and gentlemen. It's only a matter of time before he wins a 5th World Championship with Red Bull. Thank you. Well, I really hope you've enjoyed that. It's been the idea was to give you a real taste of different sides of the sport. Obviously, Sajaki is Sajaki, Martin Brundle, Grand Prix driver, who's now a broadcaster with his take on things, a deep thinker about the sport, and obviously Jonathan as well, which gives you an idea of just how complex modern Formula One is. But also, I think what's great is how much fun it still is. You know, he's same sort of age as me, just that period. You know, those kind of 10 years in a man's life between 48 and 50. They go on for a long time. Okay, so I know you've all got other things to do, but we've got some great things here to auction, and I hope that one or two of you will find a way of putting your hands in the pocket and raising some money for a good cause, and also giving some great stuff and some a great opportunity with Sajaki on the paddock tour. So one of our trustees is also involved with the Williams team, and he has brought along 2 really lovely things for you, just to get us started. A Williams cap signed by both Massa and Bottas, and a Williams official team race shirt signed by Massa and Bottas, which I'm not holding very elegantly, but you get the general idea. So we'll do them together, I think, probably, just to get things moving. No? Separately? Okay, we'll do them separately. Thank you, sir. In fact, why don't you take the mic? You do it. I'm kidding. All right. So, who's going to start me for the cap with $200? $200? $100. $100. Which? $100. Anyone got $150? $150? $150. $200? Signed cap by Felipe Massa and Valtteri Bottas, who might get on the podium tomorrow. $200? Okay, $250? $250. $300? No. $250 on my right. Anybody else for the signed cap? Felipe Massa? No. Okay. Sold to you, sir. Thank you very much. And the signed race shirt? Who'll start me at 100 for that then? I imagine you will, sir. This lady will. Okay, 150? 200. Any advance on 200? Your size. Oh, hang on. I need to check. I wouldn't want to get done for... it is an XL, actually. I'm not casting any aspersions on your size, sir, because I can't see you're hidden by that table. But anyway, XL. It would fit me. 300. Oh, brilliant. 300. Thank you very much. 400? 400. 5? Go on. 450. 5? 500. 500? Yeah. 550? No? Anybody else? $500 down the front here? Going once, going twice. Sold. Thank you very much. And you can see Tess afterwards. Those of you who are the winning bidders, by the way, see Tess afterwards, and you can get your stuff. Okay, what about this? This is very special. They don't hand these out very often, as Jonathan Wheatley was telling us. So this is a really, really special piece of gear. And who's going to start me at? You're the expert on auctions. What shall I start it at? 500, 1,000, 1,000. Did I hear 1,000 over there, or are you just suggesting the number? Who's going to start me with $500? $500. Okay, $500 on my right. Who's going to give me $1,000? $1,000. 700. Can we get up to 1,000? $1,000 for this part, signed by Adrian Newey and Daniel Ricciardo Very, very special, very unusual thing. I don't think perhaps you understand just how special this is. Yeah? $1,000? $1,000. Can we get up to $1,500? Has anyone got $1,500 here for... 12, pardon? No. $1,200? $1,200 on my right. Have you got 1,500? Yes. Good. 2,000? 2002? 22. 25? Come on, it's a very, very special thing. 25. 27? Do we get to 3? 2,750 and you can have it. $2,750. Go on. You don't get this opportunity very often in life to buy something designed by the genius designer Adrian Newey. A Red Bull. Red Bull. It's not even a wing. It's a suspension part. I've got Jackie's jet lag. You're in? A 3,000? 2,750? 3,000? 3,2? 3,1? Any more? One more? 250? 3,300? 3,450? 3,250? 3,250? Go on. It's only $100. Are you reflected, sir? Anybody else? You want to buy it, don't you? No. This is for this piece here. Only this. Yeah. Okay. Anybody else? It's at 3,250 at the moment on my right. Anybody going to get me a little higher than 3,250? It's a very low price for what this is. Okay, you ready? 3,250. Anybody? Going one? Yes? No. Going once? Going twice? Sold to my gentleman on my right. 3,250. And finally, this really is very special. These 2 passes will get you into the Formula One paddock tomorrow morning. And you'll get a ride into the circuit, leaving from the Westin at 9:30. Into the circuit. And have a coffee at Williams, and then get picked up by Sir Jackie Stewart, who'll take you on a garage tour lasting approximately an hour, but Jackie's timings can be flexible. Let's put it that way. He can end up, as you heard this evening, going on a little longer than sometimes and other times less. Anyway, great, unique opportunity to go behind the scenes and see Formula One, see the drivers, and be led around by a 3-time Formula One world champion. Who's going to start me off at... We'll have to start at $2,000 here, I think. 2,000, gentleman at the right. Who's got 3? $3,000. Yep, 3 on my right. 4? 35. Got 4? 4,000. Anybody else? 4.5? 5? Yeah. 5.5? Once in a lifetime experience. 5,500 on my right. Have we got 6? For 2 passes, remember. 2 people go in. You can split it. What are we looking at? 27.50 each? Even I can do the maths. 5.5 on my left, yeah? Looking for 6. Okay, 5.5 on my left. Is that 5.5 on my left? 6. Against you, sir. 6.5. It's against you. I've got 6 on my left. Are you in? 6.5. 7? Go on. How many times do you get led round the paddock in your life by Jackie Stewart? 7. 7.5? It is for a good cause as well. Thank you for reminding. You're doing a better job than me. Come on. I'm a commentator. I'm not an auctioneer. And now you've gone and confused me. I've forgotten where we are. So it's with you for 7, is it? Against you, 7.5. I'm looking for 7.5. Okay. 8? 8.5? For a paddock tour with Jackie Stewart for the Grand Prix Trust. $8,000 on my left, looking for $8,500. Are you in? No, $8,000 on my left then. And we're going to sell it at $8,000 for a tour of the paddock with Sir Jackie Stewart tomorrow morning. And going once, going twice, sold. Thank you very much. We really appreciate it. Those who are the successful bidders, please see Tess, and she will sort you out. And it just remains for me to say thank you very much for listening this evening. I hope you've enjoyed the insights that you've got from Sir Jackie Stewart, from Martin Brundle, and from Jonathan Wheatley. Thank you for your generosity towards the Grand Prix Trust. And enjoy the Grand Prix! It's the gentleman there in the green top. Okay, where's Tess? Tess? He's with her right now. Oh, right. Cool. I'll give all this to Tess and you